Hey everybody, Sweet Beats here with Sweet Beats Tech Stop. I am putting together a series of videos on calibration procedures for the Audio-Technica AT-RMX64. Um, if you're watching this, you probably don't have a service manual. If you do, please contact me. But that's kind of the Achilles heel of the Audio-Technica AT-RMX64. Service documentation is damn near impossible to come by. So I've got my working unit here, and we're just going to start with meter calibration. Calibrating your meters is always the first thing that you do in doing any electronics calibration, is getting your meters lined up to a known tone and level. Now, I am using a 315 hertz reference tone, and the only reason I'm doing that is because the calibration test tape that I have uses 315 hertz. It's a TAC MXT116 test tape, and that's what I've got. And 315 hertz is the reference tone. I would just suggest that you use 400, 315, 1 kilohertz. It doesn't matter as long as your level reference tone is that you use to set up your meters is the same one that you use to calibrate your playback electronics and your record electronics. So just pick a tone and use that one. But I'm using 315 hertz. So the way that this works, I've got a tone generator app on iPhone. I use, I think it's just called Signal Generator. There's a free version. It's good for this basic stuff. So I've got 315 hertz dialed up. The level coming out of the mobile device doesn't matter. I've got that going into the line input of channel 1. I've got the trim turned up. I've got that assigned to all 4 subs, and then the next step is to you need to have a level meter that is good with audio bandwidth range. I have a Fluke 85, and it's reasonably accurate across the entire audio bandwidth, and so that's important too. So I've got now a 1/4-inch cable plugged into the sub 1 output jack, and I've got the other end of that here with my meter lead, or my level meter leads clipped to that. So and then I've got the meter set to AC volts because audio is AC, not DC. And then what I'm doing is the meters on the AT-RMX64, if you look at the manual, it says in there 0 VU is equal to plus 4 dBu, or 1.23 volts AC. So step 1 is to adjust the fader of the channel and sub-channel and meter that you're wanting to adjust. Set your fader so that you get 1.23 volts at the output. Again, I've got a cable plugged into the sub 1 out jack. I've got my meter leads clipped to that, the black common to the shield and the red voltage probe clipped to the tip. So I adjusted the fader so that it reads 1.23, and it doesn't really have to be this precisely accurate, but I can't help myself. So anyway, okay, we'll call that good enough. Okay. Once you have that adjusted, then you look to see if the meter is reading a 0 VU. If it is not, And I'm going to assume that you know how to get this meter cluster out of the meter bridge housing, and that you know how to get the dress panel off and all of that garbage. If you don't, let me know. I can send you a link to a thread on a forum that a friend of mine put up with a step-by-step procedure for getting the meters out. But they're held in by 3 screws to the back of the meter bridge housing. There's 3 screws up here and 4 screws in the back. Remove those 7 screws, the whole thing lifts up, and then there's 3 screws that hold this whole assembly to the meter bridge housing. And once you have it exposed, then you can get to the trimmers on the meter amplifier PCB that trim each meter. VR1 goes to meter 1, VR2 goes to meter 2, and then VR3 over here in between meters 3 and 4 does meter 3, and then all the way on the end we have VR4, and that does meter 4. Okay, so again, we've got 1.23 volts coming at the sub 1 output, and right off of that output is a wire that goes from the jack PCB up to the meter PCB. So that's why we measure the output at the sub out jack, because that's the same level that's going to our meter. Now you'll need to, if you don't have one, get yourself a set of trimmer adjust tools at your electronics shop. And obviously mine is already reading 0 VU, but just to show you, you turn the trimmer and it adjusts the meter. So we get it so that it's on 0 when the output with our test tone is 1.23 volts, or as close as your patience will allow you to get. And then you just do the same thing. Move your cable to the sub 2 out jack. Adjust your fader till you have 1.23 volts. And I also suggest that you turn the machine on and leave it on for a little bit. Let it warm up. Things drift as it warms up. Notice I had this adjusted and now it's a little low. So, and the machine's been on for a little bit, so I'll trim it up. Same thing, once you're done with meter 2, move your cable to the sub 3 out jack. Adjust your fader until you've got 1.23 volts, and then adjust your trimmer so that it's reading 0, and then on to sub 4. Once those meters are all lined up, now you've got a basis where you can reference these meters when you're doing your playback level calibration, when you're doing your frequency response check. You can use the meters to do that because you know that 0 equals plus 4 dBu or 1.23 volts. That's your reference level. Now what about the solo meter? My solo meter was always pissing me off because it was always maxed out red. I think somebody tweaked with it at some point in this machine's life, and I figured 0 VU, it says right on the meter bridge housing, you know, it tells you what each of those lamps mean, and that last green one is 0 VU. So I figured, well, that means then if I solo, so again, this is meter number 1, 1.23 volts. If I solo meter number 1, that should now be sending 1.23 volts to the solo meter. Well, how do you adjust the solo meter? On the sub 3 module, there's a little trimmer right here. Notice that sub 1, 2, 3, and 4 have a row of trimmers right here. These little gray guys. They have a row of trimmers here, and I'll get into what those are in a different video. Excuse me. The sub 3 module has a third little trimmer. guess what that guy does. So I have my little tweaker right here. That is your calibration trimmer for your solo meter. So knowing that I have 1.23 volts, which should be 0 VU, going to the solo bus right now, I'm going to carefully adjust the trimmer until the 0 VU lamp just comes to full light. And that's how you do it. So now all of the meters are calibrated, and I can move on to the next step in the electronics calibration procedure, which is always to adjust your playback level. And I'll show you that in the next video. Thanks for watching. If you like this, like it. If you generally like this stuff, please subscribe and post any questions. I welcome questions, particularly for this device where there's such little community support for them. We'd like to keep these things going. So feel free to post up questions, comments, etc. And thanks for watching.